Taoiseach, our overriding consideration is to vindicate the integrity of Maurice McCabe and to have a comprehensive statutory tribunal of inquiry into allegations that there was a concerted smear campaign against him. But that said, the truth in government does matter, and there has been a drip of information, indeed misinformation, and a lack of candid presentation of what exactly happened in the lead-up to the Cabinet meeting to discuss the formation of the Commission investigation, and indeed the revelations about the existence of a Tusla file containing false allegations against Maurice McCabe. And I was taken by your own interview on this week, Taoiseach. You said that Minister Zappone did tell me that she intended to meet with Sergeant McCabe in a private capacity, and you added, and that's all I knew. You have apologised for that yesterday and said that that didn't happen, and that her adviser on the 24th spoke to your adviser, and in accordance with Minister Zappone's speech to the Dáil last night, which was candid and probably is a model that others should follow. My adviser met an adviser, she said, from the Taoiseach's office on Tuesday the 24th of January, the day before he was due to meet Sergeant and Mrs McCabe, and told him about the upcoming meeting. She told him that it was in respect of a complaint that the McCabes had about Tusla. Before meeting the McCabes, I told the Taoiseach Minister for Justice that I was meeting Sergeant McCabe. Now, Minister Zappone goes on to say that, just to be clear, she says that I also spoke with the Taoiseach prior to the Cabinet meeting last week. Just to be clear, this was after my meeting with the McCabes. I told him that I had met the McCabes and that we discussed false allegations of sexual abuse made against Sergeant McCabe to Tusla. The Taoiseach said this would be covered by the Commission of Investigation, which is what we are calling it at the time. I did not go into the detail of any of the allegations that I was aware of, but I did indicate to him that this was the nature of the conversation. Now, Taoiseach, when I met you yesterday morning and the day before, you rang me the night before yesterday, you indicated that you didn't know about the existence of a Tusla file. You said that to me. And you didn't know about the details contained in the file. I'm beginning to accept from all quarters you didn't know the exact graphic details of the file, but it seems clear that you didn't know about the existence of a Tusla file. Because how did you know and how could you know that the Commission of Investigation would cover the allegations if you knew nothing about the allegations themselves? Because you said to me that Minister Zappone said there are allegations against Maurice McCabe. You didn't mention Tusla. You asked were they true or false, and she said false. So I'd like to know, Taoiseach, how you knew that the Commission would cover it if you didn't know the detail of any allegations.
Thank you, Deputy.
And did also, if I just quickly, can you confirm to the House, or someone fairly quickly, did Department of Justice officials know about the existence of the Tusla file and the allegations contained in it?
Thank you,
and
Deputy.
was there an attempt to keep the protected disclosure report and its conclusions separate from the existence of the Tusla file and the allegations in that, and was Cabinet blindsided as a result of the desire on behalf of somebody to keep the two separate, just at the cusp of the establishment of the Commission of Investigation?
Taoiseach.
Thanks, Deputy Martin. Well, I don't know the answer to the last question you asked as to whether the Department of Justice knew of the existence of a Tusla file or not. Minister for Justice. Okay, Minister for Justice at the moment is looking at the question of terms of reference for the inquiry, and if it's possible to have that extended to cater for other whistleblowers or whatever. So that's being looked at the moment. In respect of your question, you've outlined the sequence of events. On the 24th of January, one of the officials in Minister Zappone's office told my office that she intended to meet with Sergeant McCabe, and that was relayed to me. On the 7th of February, in a brief, informal conversation as the Cabinet meeting of that day was about to commence, Minister Zappone mentioned to me that she had met with Sergeant McCabe about false allegations of sexual abuse that had been made about him to Tusla. She did not go into the details of that conversation with Sergeant and Mrs McCabe, or into the gross mishandling of the issue with Tusla. Now, it was absolutely clear to me that these allegations of a false nature would be fully covered by Justice O'Neill's draft terms of reference as allegations of criminal misconduct against Sergeant McCabe are at the very core of the proposed Constitution's remit. And that was actually confirmed by Mr. Justice Charlton, who said that all of the allegations revealed in the primetime programme are in fact covered by the original draft terms of reference. And they refer in paragraph B to the fact that in the protected disclosure that was sent in by Superintendent Taylor, that refers directly to an allegation of criminal misconduct made against Sergeant McCabe, and that this was the root cause of his agenda. So clearly, we were looking at the terms of reference. We had examined the terms of reference. These were produced and presented by Justice O'Neill, and central to that were an allegation of criminal misconduct made against Sergeant McCabe. Obviously, the discussion between the Minister and Sergeant McCabe dealt with that area. The Minister did not make me aware of the existence of a Tusla file and did not comment in any detail on the conversation that she had with Sergeant McCabe.
Martin.
How did you know then that the Commission would cover it? Because Judge Charlton's conclusion is retrospective. His conclusion is a retrospective conclusion. You don't know the detail of the allegations at the time, is what you're saying, in the Tusla file. And so therefore begs the question, how did anybody know in the Cabinet it would cover the Tusla file and the allegations contained within it? Because Minister Zappone has said she would have appreciated if there was advanced circulation of memos. Obviously the protected disclosure memo I detect from that, deduce from that, was never circulated in advance to the other Cabinet Ministers. Correct me if I'm wrong. So therefore it does beg the question as to how anybody knew. It seems an extraordinary display of Cabinet telepathy at work, that each individual minister deduced for themselves individually that this was somehow going to cover something that nobody knew anything about, bar Minister's opponent, allegedly, in terms of the detail and the content of the allegations contained in the Tusla file, which, as we now know, were false allegations.
Thank you, Deputy.
Against Maurice McCabe. And could you also, I think this is extremely important, because this question was asked last night, and a very straightforward answer can come from the Department of Justice and from the Minister of Justice. Did the Secretary-General of the Department of Justice, did senior officials in the Department of Justice know about the existence of the Tusla file, the allegations within it, before they circulated a memo or sent a memo via the Minister on the protected disclosure to the Cabinet? Did they know about it? This is very important. We should get a clear answer, yes or no. They did or they didn't, because the truth will come out at some stage. And we need a candid explanation of this, calmly.
Time is up, Deputy,
to explain to people the background to this.
Taoiseach.
I don't know the answer to that question, Deputy Martin. I do not know the answer to your question as to whether, obviously, yes. But I go back to the point that in the very brief conversation I had with Minister Zappone, where she pointed out to me that she had met with Sergeant McCabe, and I corrected the record yesterday on that I acknowledged that I was mistaken in my account of the sequence of contacts with Minister Zappone. She did speak to me just before the Cabinet meeting began. She did say, I met with Sergeant McCabe and we discussed questions of false allegations of sexual nature made to Tusla against him. In looking at the terms of reference, which the Cabinet were just about to consider and which I had read, clearly the central issue here is, was there not a smear campaign directed by Senior Gardaí against Sergeant McCabe? But clearly the question is referred to directly in the case of criminal misconduct made against Sergeant McCabe in the terms of reference drafted by Justice O'Neill, which Mr. Justice Charlton later said covered fully the implications of of that and all of the issues that were portrayed in the primetime programme.